What kind of brought you back? And I'm sure there must have been circumstances.
So there was no circumstances as such. It was a thought that came to my head, and I kind of just kept dwelling on that thought, and I kind of concluded that no, I need to go back.
If not Durian Laminates, what would you be doing other than software engineer?
Photography and diving.
Yeah? Do you enjoy?
I'm a scuba diver.
Oh, you're a certified scuba diver? And how often in a year do you scuba dive?
I try to do it at least twice.
Twice? Favorite location?
10-15 dives. Philippines.
Wow, that's interesting. How do you manage that? How do you ensure the team also stays young, right?
Fitness is absolutely required, not just physically, because it's also mental. I think working out is more it's a bigger mental game than it is just physical, you know.
What did probably the family do right, the business do right for you to come back so easily into the entire setup?
It was not easy. Who said it was easy? I was there for a good 9 years. I was working in corporate America, right. So it was a whole different culture.
Funnily, for somebody like me, reading has been like a absolute no-no. For some strange reason, it's just something that I can't
Audiobooks,
do.
ab to easy hai.
Of course, ab easy hai, and audiobooks have done the little bit for me. What defines your style of leadership, considering you're working with such a large manpower count, you're interacting daily with so many mid-level staff members of yours. So what's the key leadership action?
It changes over time. When the company was smaller, the team was smaller, you were multitasking as a leader. In my leadership skills, something that has stuck around for a long time is servant leadership. I love that concept. That as a leader, you're here to serve your people and make their jobs easier,
When somebody wants to really attempt joining a legacy business, some key tips we should be cautious about, keep in mind.
Absolutely. So many, but the first and foremost is communication between the previous generation or the previous person who was running the plant, and now you're a new entrant.
Hi, I'm Mohit Bafna, and welcome to the Dirty Hands Club, the podcast where transformation gets real. We sit down with the doers, the builders, the bold thinkers, the operators who aren't afraid to get their hands dirty. From plant floors to boardrooms, we dive into unfiltered conversations with the leaders shaping the future of Indian manufacturing and businesses. No jargons, no fluff, just real stories of grit, growth, and getting it done. This is Dirty Hands Club. Vishal, thank you so much for joining us today at the Dirty Hands Club. Such a pleasure having known you for the last couple of years and have done some work with you. I think you could be the perfect guest for us to have in our first podcast at Dirty Hands Club. Thank you so much and welcome.
Thank you so much, Mohit, for this opportunity. And it's been a pleasure working with you over the past couple of years, and wish you all the best for your podcast.
Super. I think we're going to keep this very, very candid when we get into this conversation. And for me, it's always been very exciting to see second generation work in legacy businesses and see how they blend, take over, and then, of course, scale. But some very early questions to start off with. Give us some background about your early days. Some days back, I was with another Generation 2 ownership team, and he was mentioning that my early times, the most important reason I went to my factory or went with my father was because I was offered goodies by the plant managers.
Sure.
So was it something like this for you, or give us some early times for you?
So early times for me, I'll just go for my education, I guess. So I was in Calcutta. I was born and brought up in Calcutta.
Okay.
Went to a boarding in Darjeeling. I was a very naughty kid. So
Sure.
Boarding school had to straighten me out. So I was there for a good 7 years, 4th grade to 10th. After that, I got an opportunity to move to the US. So I did high school, 11, 12, 4 years of computer engineering, a couple years of MBA. So I was there for a good 9 years.
Wow.
And I was also working. I had great jobs there, but yeah, some things came up, and then that's kind of when I moved back here. That's about almost 18, 19 years ago now.
In
joined the
fact,
family business, yeah.
In fact, I didn't know you lived out of US for so long. So wasn't this a difficult shift? This is, in fact, a very interesting or a personal matter that I've always had with people, that most times you move to the US and then coming back to India is a very, very difficult shift. What kind of brought you back? And I'm sure there must have been circumstances, but was this a difficult one? Because a lot of people today really want to know this.
So actually, there was no circumstances. I was married there with, my high school sweetheart. I met my wife here in Ahmedabad only. So we were living there together, married, dual income, no kids, having a ball. I was working as a software engineer. She was working as a consultant. Both very good companies. And so there was no circumstances as such. It was a thought that came to my head, and I kind of just kept dwelling on that thought, and I kind of concluded that no, I need to go back. And the reasons were just all family reasons. And you know what? And I'll tell you one thing: my dad never pressured me to come back. He was like, "You do what you want wherever you're happy. You always have this." But not once did he ask me. And my promise to him was, if you need me, call me, I'll come.
Right, true.
So he didn't call me.
Okay.
It was something that just came up on my own. I was just towards the tail end of my MBA. My wife and me both got our MBAs together. So I think it was the last semester even. This thought came into my head that, I had such a beautiful relationship with my grandfather. And I didn't have kids at that time. And, my future kids would probably not meet their grandfather or not have that relationship that I will have with their grandparents. They'll probably meet them once a year in a vacation or a holiday. So that was one of fate. My sister was about to get married, and it was just the legacy, something that was created out of very humble beginnings, had come up to a reasonable place, and we had just put up the new laminate unit. So it was more on family and, just having the ownership to come back and not just say thank you for a wonderful life and education. I'm doing things on my own now.
True.
So it was just self. It was no outside influence. It was no situation, no circumstances. So yeah, finished my MBA, came back here.
Very interesting. And then tell me, most times the number of people I meet across these legacy businesses, I always find that point when there is that shift between generations are the ones which are most tricky, right? So when you came back and decided to join this business, like you mentioned, of course, your relationship with your dad was very, very pivotal to make sure it was smooth. But give us some early tips, or what did you do right? What did probably the family do right, the business do right for you to come back so easily into the entire setup?
It was not easy. Who said it was easy? It was. I was there for a good 9 years. I was working in corporate America, right. So it was a whole different culture. And I'd never worked in India before.
True.
And my first positioning was factory.
Right.
That's where you learn the business. So it was definitely not easy. It was fascinating. It was as if I was working in a foreign country, to be very honest. I'd never worked here, never worked in a factory. So there was a lot of challenges, a lot of mental agony at times,
Right.
Seeing things, conditions, situations, dealing with government departments, all of it, right? So those emotional ups and downs were always there. But I think that settled in the first couple of years, maybe, There's always this thought that did I make the right decision?
Right.
That always happens, right? Grass is
Absolutely.
always green on the other side. But no, by and large, it was an understanding that this is my baby. That feeling came in very quickly, and everything I can do is adding value to my family, to my business, to my people working. So, when you're working in a job, that ownership feeling is not there.
Not there.
And coming back and kind of being part of the factory. That sense of belonging, I would say, sense of ownership, sense of pride in every little improvement you make. I think that's what fuels you, or at least that's what fueled me.
I think this is exactly why I've always wondered that how you've been so connected with the shop floor or the factory. And I think the answer to that is your first job back in the legacy business was on the
6 years
factory. Okay, 6 years is a lot.
I did maintenance.
So you spent a lot of time at Gemba then.
Oh, I've laid wiring, I've done maintenance, I've done
have.
everything on my shop floor. I can draw you an electrical diagram right now.
Oh, okay.
Of where the
I
wires
didn't know
are.
this part of it. But I think, don't you think this is also a very, very important contributing factor of you gelling into the business very easily?
I would say so, yeah. It's one thing to come and sit in an air-conditioned office and, kind of do that. But see, my background is also engineering, computer engineering.
Right.
So I really enjoyed it. It was not work,
Right.
Like I think the first month I learned welding in my factory. I was just fascinated by two metals attaching to each other. I had my welders teach me how to weld. Just out of passion. So I was doing all this stuff for the first, 6-8 months.
Right.
Just fun stuff.
Accustomed to
and that was fun
Gemba.
for me.
Absolutely.
Maintaining machines was just a lot of fun for me, So I was just enjoying myself.
In fact, you just mentioned that you were enjoying the shop floor or Gemba. And one thing that we've seen today is there's a lot of resistance from young chaps coming onto the shop floor or taking something up as a first job on the shop floor.
I still enjoy it, Mohit. I still love my
You have to tell us
factory
that secret sauce. Why do you say you enjoy that? Because now that you've seen both sides of the coin, you've seen the shop floor, you've been the middle management, and of course now you lead the business. You manage Durian Laminates so well. Give us that secret sauce. It's for people to know that it's not a bad thing to go on the floor. It's not a bad thing to dirty your hands.
I think it's very personal. See, I love solving engineering problems, being an engineer, doing a lot of software coding. I was doing a lot of heavy coding for healthcare IT stuff in the US.
Okay.
The company I was working with was making multi-specialty hospital paperless.
Okay.
Right? So with an engineer, right? It's about making a machine dance to your ideas and thoughts, right? And that's what gets an engineer. If I can make this machine sing the way I want it to, or if I can solve this problem by just using simple processes, that's the cake, right? That's the feedback that continues happening.
I think that reminds me of my first boss, or probably the only boss that I've worked with, Mr. Shiguru Tomanaga, who led Toyota back then in my Toyota days. And he would always talk about going to Gemba. Though being the managing director, his idea was always, I think he waited for opportunities to go back onto the shop floor, though he was leading the organization. So I think absolutely, it's
a lot easier dealing with machines than people also.
Of course.
Joking, but yeah, fair enough.
But of course, all good stories aside, any key challenges that you faced and you said, hey, be careful with this when somebody wants to really attempt joining a legacy business. Some key tips we should be cautious about. Keep in mind.
Absolutely. So many, but the first and foremost is communication between the previous generation or the previous person who was running the plant, and now you're a new entrant. While it is still yours, or the sense of ownership,
right?
Somebody else has set it up for you, right?
Absolutely.
So just seeing eye to eye there, ensuring that what change, because see, the new person comes in, they're going to make changes. That's kind of why the new person should come in, right? If there are no changes to be made, then there is no need for a new person. So you come with your ideas. With a foreign education, you've seen things that probably don't happen here. Sometimes your expectations are also too high. I want to do this, but once you sit with your business, some things are not
your way.
It
doesn't
make sense, right? It doesn't make sense for that to be in your business. But I think it's just communication, being humble, because when I joined in, there was a lot of apprehension with the staff, America se aaye, kya karenge, nahi karenge, that sort of stuff. But when they saw me get my hands dirty. The Dirty Hands Club,
the Dirty Hands Club.
It's funny because I remember my first or second day, I was trying to touch some machine and this guy said, maintenance, sir, kapde pe grease lag jayega. I probably gave him the nastiest look I ever gave anybody.
True.
And, once they worked with me, that was never a problem ki sir ka kapda kharab ho jayega.
True, but tell me when, now that you're in the leadership role, right? And you still keep going back on the shop floor at the factory. What defines your style of leadership, considering you're working with such a large manpower count, you're interacting daily with so many mid-level staff members of yours. So what's the key leadership action?
It changes over time. When the company was smaller, the team was smaller, you were multitasking as a leader. In my leadership skills, something that is stuck around for a long time is servant leadership. I love that concept that as a leader, you're here to serve your people and make their jobs easier, rather than just always demand.
Seems to be a very unique, where did you catch this?
This was something I learned in my MBA and I just stuck with me, where, and I think most leaders do it knowingly or unknowingly.
Right.
All the crap comes to the leaders' table eventually, right? The biggest issues, the dirtiest issues will eventually come because small issues get solved, right? So as your job as a leader is what? To remove a problem that is being faced by your organization. That's fundamentally what every leader does, right?
Every leader does.
That's servant leadership in one essence.
True. I can't think of what else leadership teams do, right? Strategizing could be a part of it, but I think that's a very small part done very easily. The key is to, of course, get it deployed, make sure that it's implemented on the ground and the results are there to see. And like you rightly said, table pe problems hi aate honge. Otherwise, there are no reasons
Sure.
why something comes up.
And it changes. See, when we went from when I joined the company, we had the second production line was just being installed. It was halfway through. Today we have 8 production lines spread across 2 factories and a third backward integrated chemical plant. So now, previously I would be everywhere.
True.
I could be everywhere. Now I cannot physically.
Absolutely.
There's no time. So the leadership style will change to more delegation, to getting more senior people. We are trying to do a lot of trainings because we have very good people, but they may not be trained for a new skill.
True.
The person is really good. Trust is there. All of it. So we are now sending a lot of people for trainings. So growing their skill sets.
True.
So the leadership changes from time to time and situation to situation even, right?
But tell me, since you mentioned and critical focus of it relies on, are you able to groom your people, right? Eventually, like you said, you started with 1 plant, now you have 3 plants, and this keeps growing. So how do you also ensure that your homegrown talent continues to grow? Because most times that I've realized companies do best when they have homegrown talent. Right, and not bring in talent every time you need somebody to do pull up their socks and do something for you, right? So the key to
So I'll tell you,
growing.
this is something I learned very recently. I have a business coach who helps me a lot.
Okay.
A very senior position in the Indian corporate arena. And he tells me this, that Vishal, use every opportunity when you're talking to your team. Every opportunity is a coaching opportunity.
True.
He's like, don't miss that. When you're in meetings, okay, you have certain thoughts. You're just focusing on the core thing. But, you could use a negative example to coach the team. So I'm really, putting a little bit more focus on that. It's just that not to solve the problem at hand, but also make it so that you can share a deeper insight.
You touched upon a very interesting point, that even after this entire journey that you've achieved, you still have a leadership coach.
Oh, yeah.
And then, back at my days, I remember I got very lucky with, somebody who coached me back in my college days and kind of really pushed me around the corners when it had to be done. Do you see a very, very important role to have a mentor, to have a coach through this journey?
Absolutely. I think so. I mean, some people take feedback very well. Some people don't. So it depends on your own style. But no, he shows the mirror to me. That's his job. He's like, Vishal, I'm not a consultant.
True.
My job is to just show you the mirror.
The mirror. But it's always good to have somebody do this journey
because
with you.
Being on top is a very lonely place.
Oh, that's my favorite.
We show the mirrors to our people all the time, right?
Right.
मेरे को कौन दिखाता है?
In fact, you touched upon a very, very interesting situation that probably, I've always faced, right? Considering I started Gemba back at 25. Being at top is a very lonely place, right? And you don't have colleagues, you don't have friends at lunch, you're having your meals quickly between cars and your other meetings. How do you keep yourselves really motivated right on top? And I've seen this being a challenge with the newer generation moving up on leadership positions. Some thoughts on
Staying
that?
motivated?
Yeah.
I think it's just ingrained, right? You want to improve, you want to do better, expand, you want to do good for your people, ensure they grow with you. So there's so many things, right? I mean, finances and money is definitely a part of it, but there are all these other aspects that come into
True.
play.
True.
You get a kick when you export to a new country you've never touched.
True.
Right? You add a new customer, your team has created a phenomenal product line. That gives you a kick. You've made a product you've never made before.
True.
Right? Or you've solved a customer problem which has haunted them or you.
So you're saying you'll figure that out when you go up there?
I think so. There are so many motivating factors, right? I think okay, I'll tell you something very personal. Like when I hear, one of my managers, sir, my kid is he's studying in Paris. My kid is studying in Prague. I've sent my kid overseas. I've studied overseas, right?
Of course.
From very humble beginnings even. It was not like charted out for me that you will go there. It
Correct.
just happened and I went and my dad saw it through. And when I see my employees sending their kids overseas, man, that just gives me so much happiness. I know a few kids who are gone overseas. Whose
Overseas.
parents are working, and
True.
I think that just foundational change. That family structure changes.
So it's a standard take that as you go up there, your reasons for motivation change.
Changes.
And then you figure that out, right? So
Absolutely.
while it's lonely, it's not bad to be there. Let's quickly shift from a lot of work related. And of course, I've known you for so long, so I know you professionally very well. But let's take a break and jump quickly a little into your personal life, right? Tell us what keeps you motivated to go back home. And I know the standard answer to that is kids, right? I
Family,
know.
wife.
And the wife,
Yeah,
of course.
Don't you can't let your spouse.
No,
be
I
slighted,
completely
no?
agree.
Yeah.
But then how's life beyond work, right? How do you manage that critical debate that's been there for eternity, the work-life balance? What's life for you then?
Yeah, it gets challenging, work-life balance. But fortunately, being an entrepreneur, you are in control of your own time, right? So yeah, there are times when work needs time. There are times when family needs time.
Right.
There are a few holidays or vacations which are non-negotiable for me.
Right.
I've got to do them. Got
True.
to have that time because that's time when you're 24 hours with your family, right?
True.
So
True.
I really value that.
Are you able to leave your phone behind?
No, I work for an hour or two before. So no, that's not possible. You could, but then you will suffer the consequences when you come back. The vacation is the peak will drop very quickly. No, what I usually do is I'm not on my phone all day.
Right.
But depending on the time zone and all of it, I'll give an hour of work before.
Right.
And I try to do it before I head out when I'm in the morning.
Right.
So all those things are taken care of. But my senior management have access to me.
Right.
They're permitted to call me at 2 a.m. if they need to. They don't. I've given them clear permission. If you're stuck, if you feel you need to call me at 2 in the morning, I will answer your call. I don't get those calls. But
You're at peace of mind then.
Yeah, but they have that comfort. Right?
True. This is a very personal question because I wanted Kritika to listen to this, This is my challenge with her consistently that, boss, if you're always going to be on your phone, then a holiday is not one. But then,
It's good to cut off. And I avoid calling people if they are on holidays. I'll tell all the people who report to me, I'll just tell them that share it on my calendar if you're on leave.
Absolutely.
More importantly, because you forget people are on leave. Or you call, so I don't.
Right.
I try to avoid it. There are unavoidable situations.
I think that sort of maturity is already there today. People understand that there is supposed to be that sort of privacy given out, especially when people are on leave. But
I'll see what I do is I'll message them. Hey, call me when free. I need to discuss something. Right?
It's important, I think. It's not as easy to say that let's just let it be. But sometimes you just have to have the chat, and I think you do it.
Why are we working for? We're talking about this in the car here, right?
Right. True.
What is the purpose of work, right?
Yeah.
Some of it is spending quality time with family, no?
True. No, absolutely. I think that's a non-negotiable. And eventually, when you call it a day at the fag end of life, I think when you reflect back, this is what will help you understand.
No, there are times I'll give a 9 p.m. call to somebody, but it's mostly avoided if I need an answer now. People understand that.
True. Tell me, with this sort of journey and this sort of learning on the floor in the business, traveling, what else do you do to upgrade your knowledge? I mean, that's an integral part, right? Growth, change also needs a lot of learning for us to come through, be updated with the sort of things we see today in AI happening. How do you upgrade yourselves? How do you envision these things for your organization?
Talking to people like you, for sure.
Thank you so much.
You've pushed us, do this, all of it. No, so I'll tell you, reading, naturally, watching podcasts, follow a few good people, and most importantly, networking, right?
True.
So I'm part of a very elite networking organization that, gets you connected with amazing people.
True.
And that pushes me a lot because just seeing what other people are doing, sharing experiences,
True.
Plant visits. Just this Sunday, I had visited a couple factories. It was just something brilliant to learn. Right. So I think just that interaction, talking to people, networking, reading, I think that's about it. That's where you get ideas,
And then if you were to reflect back and say, hey, I could have done this better, what would that one thing be?
Oh, that's a
undo and redo.
Question, no?
Undo and redo.
Undo and redo. probably delegate more.
Yeah?
Yeah. Sometimes I feel I'm the bottleneck, which I'm trying to do now,
Right.
diligently
Right.
delegate more.
I think speaking about bottleneck, how do you transition from being a pure legacy business towards being more corporatized? Because that's going to be the need of the hour, right?
Yeah.
Like we were talking a little while back, probably our kids are not even going to be a part of our businesses or the legacy that you've been given to and you've been building upon. So how does somebody strategize for that? And
So
have you
how
been
do you
thinking on
professionalize
it?
your business? Is that what you're
True,
so
true,
right?
true,
I'll
true.
answer that. So getting a good business coach who's working in professional.
Right.
So the goal with me and my coach is just to help me professionalize the company,
True.
because I realize that I have, a lot of things go through me. So setting structures around that. So
Right.
it's an ongoing journey, and I think I've achieved quite a lot. There's a lot more to
True.
go. So I think that's just getting somebody who's done it. Why reinvent the wheel?
Reinvent the wheel.
Right? You could go off on a tangent and you could lose a couple of years or that sort of stuff. So why reinvent the wheel?
True.
Talk to a friend, talk to somebody who's done it, understand it, read. There's enough literature
There's
out
enough
there.
literature. But funnily, for somebody like me, reading has been like a absolute no-no. For some strange reason, it's just something that I can't do.
Audiobooks, ab to easy hai.
Of course, ab easy hai, and audiobooks have done the little bit for me. But tell me your other things, right? Like through the day, are you also able to focus on some sort of fitness? Because that's a constant challenge we are having back at our teams. And I'm always telling people that, boss, while work is important, you're engrossed, it demands you to be there. If you're not going to be fit enough, you'll run out at 45. How do you manage that? How do you ensure the team also stays young, right?
So fitness is absolutely required, not just physically, because it's also mental. I think working out is more it's a bigger mental game,
right,
than it is just physical.
True.
And if you don't if you don't exercise, you are not going to have energy to run.
True.
Which is
absolutely.
counterintuitive, right? You waste energy to gain energy.
Right.
There's a phrase, you use it or lose it.
True.
So and really, the days I'm not able to work out if I have an early morning travel or something, I'm groggy towards the end. And the day I worked out, put in my hours in the gym or whatever. So it's a non-negotiable.
So it's a non-negotiable, right? And I think
6 days a week.
Everybody should know this. It's a non-negotiable.
100%.
Especially if you want to run the long distance, then you have to prepare for it.
You will get fatigued the day I don't work out. For whatever reason, if I've not worked out for a month.
Right.
I feel my performance, my cognitive thought process, you're drowsy.
True.
And then you fall into a cycle. This is at least for me true. That if I'm not trying to be fit, then I eat worse. But if I put in those hours in the morning in the gym, then I'm very conscious of, do I really need to eat this? Probably not, So I think it builds on itself. And if you stop it, it just degrades even further. That's at least true for me and for a lot of people.
I'm sure it should be true. And like you rightly mentioned, right? With today's lifestyle, we have so much bad things that we do.
We don't move.
We don't move. True. The biggest problem.
Correct.
We don't move.
So that becomes a big problem.
Right. Absolutely. No, I think this is great. There's so much, goes into building a legacy business. But I also always believe that it needs a lot of effort to sustain and grow it further, which is where I've had this conversation with so many Generation 2 people that, hey, while this is legacy, if you've not put in and done the right things, this would not last.
Yeah.
So it's the right steps which is actually pushing it through. And I've always seen a lot of young Generation 2 coming in and having this chat with me saying, how do I make this easy? What is it that's going to work for us? How do I treat this like my baby? And I think a lot of this is something that you've just answered. But if you were to really give maybe one or two key things for these young Generation 2 to come on board and, make sure they're able to take the legacy forward, what would that be? I think, Vishal, with all this knowledge and capability that you've built, one thing that I've always told people is that getting a legacy business is not so bad actually, because just getting the business does not mean you will be able to sustain it and grow it further, right? There is so much effort that goes into sustaining a business and then, of course, growing it into another large piece or another large legacy itself. What would you advise the generations that are coming in or that are getting these batons and saying, "Hey, now you lead"? What are the key advices you would give these guys, so that they can kind of blend in very easily and make it feel that it's also their own baby?
So see, I think it cannot be forced, right? I think that's fundamental.
True.
I'll just run by my own example. I wanted to be an software engineer. I was given that freedom. Had I not been given that freedom and mandated, no, you forget your dream career or whatever you're passionate about, but you have to do this. Maybe there would be some resistance, some animosity, what have you, right? Fortunately, in my case, I pursued what I wanted to. I was doing well. I had a career there. It's growth path. But then I decided I want to come back. So it was my call. It was my baby. It essentially became my baby, right? The day I decided that, no, I want to do this.
Right.
So just giving the future generation the option, maybe some people may not have an option, right? Financial situations, what have you, right? This is so complex. But as long as their buy-in is there,
True.
right? I think that essentially makes the biggest difference. I think we see this with employees, right? Somebody who doesn't like their job, but just they want to do it, versus somebody who's really passionate about their job, right? You see this, I'm sure.
Oh, consistently.
And I think that also applies to leadership, right?
True. Absolutely.
Right?
It's the same psychic eventually
Right?
that
Absolutely.
comes in, right?
If I want to, am I happy doing this for the rest of my life? Am I happy doing this for the next 10 years?
True.
Right? No, then it feels like a punishment.
Yeah. So
And if you're not vested,
it's
the results are
a
gonna
punishment straight. So I think that willingness is very important. But I think if there is that willingness to kind of take this as your own baby, then I'm sure there is a lot of effort that goes through. And then you have to consider it yours and take it forward from there.
Precisely.
True. There's another very interesting thing that, while we were talking, I just came to my mind. When we look through all the other podcasts that I've at least heard over time, I've realized the conversations mostly lead about being $1 billion baby, $1 billion valuation, how quickly you've grown, how rapidly you've grown. Did you just realize that amidst all your conversations or everything that you've said right now, there's been no mention on numbers. In fact, what gives you the highest what gives you most happiness? Kids of my team members going overseas to study. Isn't that a massive shift in terms of how people have been thinking in legacy businesses versus new age businesses?
No. I don't think there is any wrong way of thinking. I have people I really admire and their goal is to have $1 billion business. And I'm just like, wow, that's amazing.
True.
To have that goal even, right?
Right.
So I just think it's different people, different personality, what gets you going, I don't think one is good or one is bad.
Right.
Right. It's just something very personal. Of course, I want $1 billion business, right? Who doesn't want that, right?
Finally, the numbers.
Well, numbers, of course. We're businessmen. We are here to make numbers. That's why we are here, because that's what determines everything. It determines how many people you employ. It determines how many of your employees' kids go abroad. It's all connected, right?
Right.
We are not a NGO or a non-profit.
True. And eventually, if the numbers flow is when you can train, when you can grow. And if you're growing, then automatically your team is growing.
Precisely.
The ecosystem around you is growing.
It fuels everything.
True. So
that's a given. There's no question about it, right? That's a given.
But I think, again, that's what I'm saying, right? Conversationally, this has been so different right now that we've not spoken of the given. We've actually spoken around the given versus speaking of the given, which has been a very...
We talk a lot about numbers in our meetings, so I think this is a nice break from that conversation.
True. And I think beyond a certain number, right? It's these things which give you that kick, which matter most, the small joys in life which come back and ensure that, it keeps you motivated.
I think it really does.
To come back every day and do that repeatedly in loops, right? Super. No, I think this is some great piece of advice. And for a lot of the second generations coming in watching this, it's going to be some fuel, I would say.
I wouldn't call it advice. I am nobody to advise anybody else.
True.
It's just my thoughts, right? So it's just,
No, I think, and I think to rephrase it, experiences define learning today and not advice. And I think with all our clients, with you and so many others that we see on a daily basis, there's so much experience. And this is, in fact, one reason why we decided to get Dirty Hands Club up because there has to be the experience sharing on how bad it was, what turned it around, and what motivates you to come back. But with all of this, let me quickly switch to a very, very interesting round where we ask some quick, rapid questions,
Okay.
and you give us some light moments because I'm sure you meant so much business. You're so clear, focused. I don't think most people would know the lighter side of you. So that today we expose you.
Okay,
Let
let's
me
go.
go ahead. One thing that instantly kills your vibe at work,
Lying. When people lie to me.
and that happens sometimes.
Yeah, it happens sometimes. I'll call it out blatantly, but yeah, that just,
It's an absolute no-no.
there's got to be trust.
Biggest advice you've heard in businesses which you think is not true.
It's a tough one. Biggest.
I'm sure, as a businessman, you must be getting so many advices every day. And we see that, right? There is no shortage of advisors or consultants like us.
I'm going to come back to that. Let me
Come back
see.
to that
Just-
later.
Yeah, it's just drawing
Super.
blank.
If not Durian Laminates, what would you be doing other than software engineering?
Photography and diving.
Yeah?
I'm
Do you enjoy
I'm a
it?
scuba diver.
Oh, you're a certified scuba diver? And how often in a year do you scuba dive?
I try to do it at least twice.
Twice? Favorite location?
10, 15 dives. Philippines.
Wow. That's interesting. Go to productivity hack at work. Sorry, I repeat that. Go to productivity hack at work.
Eat the frog in the morning. It's from a book which says, something that gives you the most stress. It's the dirtiest job. You don't want to do it, right? Do it the first thing in the morning because that just opens up your whole day. Otherwise, you're just thinking about it.
Get it out of the
I need
way
to
right
get it.
then.
So it's called Eat the Frog.
Eat the frog. Oh, this is new for me. I think very interesting. One thing you've learned the hard way right at the top of the organization. Some tough ones were meant to be.
Yeah. Being nice to people works better than not being nice to people.
Yeah,
I've learned it the hard way, but I've learned it.
sure. Boardroom or shop floor?
Shop floor. I've answered that.
You
Yeah?
love.
Shop floor.
I knew that answer right there. Absolutely. What is the most used app on your phone?
Most used app on my phone is my email client.
Not WhatsApp?
WhatsApp also. Yeah, fair enough. WhatsApp also. Because
You
we
know-
do work on WhatsApp now.
I truly believe that emails will be redundant a couple of years from now because personal, professional, friends, there's everything that happens on WhatsApp, right? And
It does, but we are an email heavy company and it's working out well for us.
Yeah.
It's something that I brought in from my stay in the US.
right.
So my
some structure to
Yeah, there
it.
is obviously lots of WhatsApp.
Right.
I think
lots
for
of
longer
WhatsApp.
chain thoughts.
You can't remove WhatsApp from your life
No,
today.
possible.
True. What's your guilty pleasure after a long work day?
Sitting on my recliner watching TV.
Okay.
I love it.
Hidden talent that your team doesn't know about?
Probably my scuba diving and I'm a skier. I'm an avid skier. So
Oh.
these two skills, I don't think a lot of people know about.
Wow. If your leadership style had a tagline, what would it be? Tough one, I know.
An emphatic leader, empathy. I don't know. I feel for a lot of people. Feel for my guys. I don't know that's
No, I think that. I think being
in a
the
rapid
people's
fire
man.
context. I think that's my answer. If you give me more time, I could probably come up with a
No,
better
you
answer.
have no more time on that one for sure.
There we go.
What would your Netflix show be called if we were to bring Durian Laminates on a Netflix show to be made?
The company, the Laminates. A commitment to excellence. That's our tagline, and I would use that only. Why
Sure.
change it? Why change something that's working?
No, absolutely. Whatever works best. And finally, legacy or disruption?
Disruption is very fascinating. I have
True.
not disrupted anything, so I'll stick with legacy. But
Legacy.
disruption is fascinating for me.
No, thank you so much, Vishal. I think this has been so refreshing. And the whole idea of having you here today was to basically tell the world that legacy businesses have as much fun, have as much emotions, and as much effort goes into building and running them through. I really hope that a lot of the new doers, the new incoming entrepreneurs in the legacy business are able to relate to you and take this from you. And I'm sure you should have a lot of people reach out to you for some more advising or coaching, or just, as we call it, experience sharing. Thank you so much from the Dirty Hands Club. It was a pleasure having you here today.
Thank you, Mohit. Pleasure's all mine. Thank you so much. And all the best to your new Dirty Hands Club podcast.
Thank you. No, you're the first member.
There we go.
And we really hope that some point of time we will have some sessions, maybe yearly ones, get some of these members together to share experiences further on.
Great. That would be phenomenal. Yeah.
Super. Thank you so much.
Thank you.